Hey there, Groovesters, Groove Stars, Ridgely here. Super excited to be spending some time with a dear old friend, very young looking old friend. We've been together a long time. Joel Greenwald, brother, I'm so glad to be here with you. You're looking terrific.
Thanks, Ridgely. It's great to see you, and you are as well. It's been a while.
It has been a while indeed. And I know you've had an incredible entrepreneurial journey, formal training as a lawyer, but then became more than a lawyer, the managing partner of Greenwald Doherty, a big firm in New York City, but really more of a business guy, very accomplished speaker. You're on the circuit speaking to CEOs on a regular basis. But where did it all start for you? Where did the entrepreneurial journey or the entrepreneurial bug grab you early on?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I think that for me, going to law school, so I'll start in the middle, kind of going to law school is, not necessarily a great track for entrepreneurialism because lawyers tend to be risk adverse. And, I think that it was always a tension for me because I liked law and I liked a lot of the intellectual aspects of it, but you have to be, something a little bit different to be entrepreneurial in law. And, for me, I always had that entrepreneurial bug. Going back, I'd say to when I was a little kid, my dad had a drugstore, the only drugstore in a small county in Pennsylvania. And it was the only store in the whole county. And he came from a line of pharmacists. I certainly didn't want to do that, but I was the kid in my family that ended up working with him the most. And, he would pay me at 4 and 5 years old to dust shelves. And I would make my money in Matchbox cars. That would probably be a labor violation now, but it was certainly a good thing to do. So I kind of recognized that. I remember my dad would talk to me about stress of, managing a business and some of those things when I was young. And I remember thinking, I was thinking about this not long ago, that I actually said, yeah, but you're kind of in control of your own way, meaning you were in control of your own destiny. And it seems like that stress is I internalized that stress seemed preferable to me than being at the mercy of somebody else. And so I kind of carried that with me because my dad was an entrepreneur too. His drugstore, sent us to college and everything. And, he supported us well from this little drugstore. And he took every aspect of that so seriously. He was really a perfectionist. And I learned customer service and inventory and a lot of things from that. And, when I was a teenager, I became immersed in sports memorabilia. And I remember going to flea markets and putting ads in the newspaper at 16 and 17 to buy up people's collections, and mothers were getting rid of their kids' collections in shoe boxes. And I was just buying them all up and then trying to sort them and reselling them. And, so I kind of dabbled in that, and that was always appealing. There was something that was treasure hunting oriented about that. And going to shows and doing a little bit of that. And then, when I went off to college, that took a back seat. But I still think that was some of the entrepreneurial origins for me. It was the drugstore to the sports memorabilia. And then I think that entrepreneurialism became sidetracked probably for about 10 years. And then, there was a certain point in my career at law where, I needed to break off and go on my own. And I ended up doing that. And I guess, the impetus was that I discovered employment law. And then when I discovered it, I started getting business in it. I had not had a background. It was kind of right place, right time. It was just coming into vogue in the early 90s. And I was somewhat self-taught in that. I'd gone to law school at Duke, and they put me in a big, those kinds of schools, they earmark you for a corporate firm and a corporate existence and that kind of thing. It was a great school. but most people go to corporate law from that, or some form of big firm, and that really wasn't. I was a summer associate there, and I was at a big firm. There's nothing bad about the firm, but it wasn't really my cup of tea. I wasn't really meant to do that. And then I had another stop, and then ultimately, when I started to realize that employment law was my destiny because I liked it, it was kind of, it was business oriented, but it was also, it had good stories. And I liked that also. I kind of decided it was time to start my own shop. So at age 33, which was, I think, the right time for me, I moved to a different state, had my first kid, and started my business all within a 2-week period.
That must have been a pretty interesting stretch there, my friend.
I got to tell you something, you got to be kind of young and stupid to pull the Band-Aid off like that, but it worked.
And what was it like in the early days when you were first getting going with your business? This is a question I love to talk about because so many of the people that pay attention to this, to our program, are early stage entrepreneurs, maybe not early in their biological clock, but certainly early in their journey of entrepreneurialism. What was it like for you at the beginning? How were those early days?
Well, I think they were exciting. I had a young family. I had another kid 2 years later, another one 4 years after that. So I had a young family, and I was working really hard. I think that with us, there was a specific and my current partner, Kevin Doherty, my main partner in the firm that's been with me the longest, he was an associate, and he's kind of like where I worked for me. And he said, "Can I please come with you?" And I said, "Yeah, but I can't pay you much." And he was still okay with it. But we basically had a plan to shift over fully to the business side to represent management, because I liked the fact that it wasn't just fighting and it was mostly consultative. But the idea was that business is harder to acquire. So in the first couple of years, we were doing a combination of plaintiffs and representing individuals. And I would say the majority of it was representing individuals. So while I was still going through the learning process of employment law, I was handling individuals. And, I had already litigated in my interim step quite a bit, done criminal law and general practice and a lot of other things after corporate. So, to do a deposition and to file a complaint and those kinds of things, I had experience at that. And, it was exciting times because the ADA had just come out, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Family Medical Leave was just coming out, sexual harassment law was just hitting the Supreme Court. It was kind of the early golden years of employment law. And I had a critical mission between early 98 and maybe 2000, 2001 to switch the focus from individuals to companies. And, it did come. Listen, you're waiting for the phone to ring, and every client that comes in is like gold. And one of the things I did early on when businesses started approaching me, I started asking them specifically why they were leaving the places that they left, why they were interested in leaving. And, most commonly, I heard it was a customer service issue, that basically they thought that lawyers weren't getting back to them, or every answer was no. And they didn't feel that there was a partnership, if you will. So I think that, I was very big on establishing certain values and philosophies that really continue to this day, that were, I think, set in stone in those early days about, the critical mission to treat customers a certain way, and to also, value their opinion and understand that, one of the things that you have to respect about advocacy and representing companies is that they may decide to not listen to you, but that's their decision. And their decision sometimes is a business decision. You're one piece of the pie there. And, it was kind of a process for me to understand that. And I think transmitting that to my attorneys that started working with me, that, you've got to respect the client's viewpoints, because the client sometimes knows better. Maybe they're going to take a risk and be exposed to X, as long as you told them that there is that exposure, but they're making a decision that maybe is better for them in the long run. And you're the coach, but they're the quarterback on the, or you're the quarterback on the field and they're the coach, the reverse. And I'm thinking that they're ultimately responsible for making the decisions. You have to give them the information. And so I think, that perspective also guides us to this day, is that, we want to be business friendly. We want to understand that businesses, I found early on that a lot of people really resented the fact that lawyers were condescending too often to their clients. And I really didn't want that. And specifically around the time of our early days, I started speaking a great deal because I found that that was a phenomenal way to market. And I had some talent at it and I enjoyed it a lot. And, and part of my speaking style was very informal and trying hard not to speak like a lawyer. But the reality is that, one of the things I wanted to do was respect people's questions, listen to them carefully and understand them and give them the respect that they needed. And that's part of, the mindset we all have, is that we don't want to be perceived with any of the negativity that's sometimes associated with the arrogance that comes with some professions.
Now, let me ask you a question about clients, because you mentioned early on, every client that came through the door was like gold. But later, how do you find today, after a lot of experience, how do you discern between the ones we really want and the fact that a lot of clients, once you're established, are not gold at all? If anything, they can be a cesspool of energy drain and whatever.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest, that's one of the biggest issues that I think any business has, is deciding what clients to take. And I think in law, because if you're litigating, it's hard to get out of a case once you've started. And so when we were on the plaintiff side, when we were representing individuals, when we first started, that's a crucial skill for plaintiffs' lawyers to know, because it's always on some level of contingency. So that became very important. But even on the management side, okay, and it's to this day, it's probably slightly less important because people are getting paid hourly. But it's to me equally important, because we want to have clients that share our values, that treat our staff well, that understand that we're performing a valuable service for them. And the companies that we represent, I think, are very much aligned with us. And I think within a short period of time, you get a gut check on that. And I think your team gets a gut check on that. And they start recognizing problems if there exists pretty early. You can't always get it right, just like you can't always get a hire of somebody that works for you completely right. But I think that you could get better at better. You can get better and better at sensing whether or not those folks are going to fit into your structure.
Excellent. So let me ask you this question. What do you think are the two, based on your experience as an entrepreneur and dealing with entrepreneurs, what do you think are the two top characteristics of a successful entrepreneur?
I think that I think you've got to be willing to fail. I think that that's true. And I think that, so in other words, you've got to be able to try something, and that takes a degree of risk. And I think that I think you also have to be self-actualized. I've really never answered this question, but I think you have to know yourself, what it is you're good at and what it is that you're not good at early, so that you could build a team around you that supplements you, and that becomes the foundation of building a team that all have different skill sets.
Mm-hmm. So talking about being willing to fail, can you share with us a colossal or big setback that you had that you learned something from, and what was that, and what did you take away from it?
Well, I wouldn't consider it a colossal setback, but I would because I view every setback as a learning opportunity. So I almost think of them all as positive because you have to make mistakes to learn. It's just the way it is. And I'm not talking specifically about advice mistakes because there you don't have that kind of latitude, but I'm talking about business mistakes. And, we're always trying to improve client offerings. And we've had ancillary businesses, and we have a new one we're launching, which we're very excited about. I could get into that, but we had a company that was a strategic HR company that was really dedicated to improving culture and things like that within companies around 2011, 12, 13. And I think that the company, which was called Workforce Engine at the time, I think it cannibalized the law firm a little bit, and the offerings weren't so discernible. But I think the one thing that we did learn really well there was we learned how to charge in a subscription format, and that companies weren't paying us by the hour. For the most part, they were paying us a set monthly fee. And I'm not talking about a retainer. And I think that a few years later, we brought that into the law firm, and it continues to be a driving force for us today, which is companies paying us a set monthly fee to keep them healthy, as opposed to just dealing with after the fact crisis. And I think a lot of that thinking came through that business. So I view that as, at the time I thought of that as, oh, well, this doesn't feel like a success, but ultimately, new things are born from other things.
Yeah, I love that. Just taking that one thing and parlaying it forward, if you will. And talk to us a little bit about mentorship. How has mentorship impacted you in your entrepreneurial journey, and how important do you think that is for budding entrepreneurs to find mentors?
Look, we don't know everything. In fact, we don't know a lot of things. So it is something that I think is hugely important. And I always valued certain coaches and mentors and people that I had in my life. To be honest with you, my late father, when he passed away in 2012, that was a loss to me, because I think that even on a spiritual level connected to business and running a family and running a business and balancing that, he was a great role model for me. But there were others along the way that I think also were very, very valuable. And I don't ever not take a meeting or a call from somebody that wants that. So for me, I try hard to continue to get coaching and mentorship, and to continue to try to give it. And there's programs. We've both in an entrepreneur organization for many years, and I've continued to mentor through that as well on mentorship programs. And I get a lot of joy giving back there.
For sure. And alongside with mentorship and being a mentor, what's your feeling and take on the significance and importance of personal development, personal growth, continuing to train yourself?
I don't know. I'm a middle-aged work in progress. I think that's kind of one of the characteristics of most entrepreneurs, is that they're never completely satisfied with their business or who they are, and it keeps them driven. And so whether it's, work-life balance perspectives, whether it's a new initiative, or, whether it's personal or business or family, I think we have to always be looking to grow, or we just come to a standstill. And I think that's unhealthy for the entrepreneurial personality to kind of be in a place that's stuck.
Mm-hmm. So in that regard, give us 3 resources or books that you would recommend to any budding entrepreneur that made a difference to you, and why they made a difference.
Well, let me think about that. I would think that the first thing that I would say was that the book that I think really changed my perspective, maybe back in 2006, 7, or 8, was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
Mhm.
And I think that that book, I've recommended it to many, many people. And I like that book a lot. And I think that what it really influenced was that the founder of an entrepreneurial company needs to pivot to spend a significant amount of time working on the business, not just in the business. And, you know, when you're in a profession that values billable hours and things like that, most people don't think that way. But the reality is, you know, we jumped a level when I started taking that approach. And don't think it didn't come with some heartache, because, you know, there's this part of you that thinks, oh my God, these people, they can't do this as well as me. And then ultimately they could do certain things much better than you. And that's okay. And you've got to give them the leeway to grow and develop so that you could do what you do best and what's best for the business. And you're putting yourself and the business in a position to win. Not only that, but I think my team and continues to this day recognize that that was the best use of me. And I continue to do that. And I think the E-Myth really spurred that, because I saw that in black and white. And then I also saw Michael Gerber speak and kind of reemphasize some of the same points. So I think that's one.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's interesting. From our organization that we spent a lot of time in, a lot of years in, the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, that is the number one book that is recommended. Of all what I do, Lessons from the CEO with other entrepreneurs, fellow entrepreneurs, many of whom are friends of yours, that is the number one recommended book.
Yeah, you know, it certainly felt that with me. I think there's a lot of other great books, you know, Good to Great. There's a lot of other phenomenal books. I like The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I like a lot of other business books, but that one specifically, I think, speaks to what it is your role needs to be successful. And I really, really like that. And I think that especially for folks that are in professional services, where they think they have to be in the business, and removing them a little bit feels somehow wrong. I really think that's a disruptive book, and I recommend it all the time. I think that you mentioned EO, and for me, the Entrepreneur Organization, which, you know, I've been in for many, many years, would be number 2 for me, which is that, and I'm not putting these in any particular order, I'm just thinking of 3 things. I think being a part of an organization where you're surrounded by other entrepreneurs, and you're getting into that mindset of thinking like them and understanding that your thoughts are not wrong, and that it's okay to think of 10 ideas and understand that 3 or 4 of them may be good, but 6 or 7 of them may not be that good. That's okay to think that way. And I love that. So it kind of gave me permission to be who I was in terms of that. And I had those folks as a sounding board. So when we made a decision to, or when I really kind of was noodling the idea of the law firm going into being a subscription-based firm as our main driver, back in 2016 or so, I ran a presentation to my forum of other EO decision makers. And it's something that, you know, I put out there, and I wanted them to give me their feedback. And that was really, really helpful. They validated certain things, they questioned certain things, and it was a process to get it right. But to me, that was a first landing spot for me to vet that. Even better than a coach was to have kind of a group of my peers. And I think EO really provides some very big value there. So I think that was essential.
No, when you say, for everybody that's paying attention here to EO, really what that is a mastermind of like-minded peers. So it happens to be EO isn't a very established group like that, but you can find other masterminds like EO or Vistage or many of the others that are out there to participate in. And I think that the takeaway is find a peer-to-peer group, of entrepreneurs that you can vet these ideas with. And I remember those dialogues about that model that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were together back in those days. And I think that, you know, I also want to suggest that I think Vistage is a great group as well. And, I was a member there for a while, and I continue to be a speaker there. I think that they offer also tremendous, it's a little bit different, and there's some goodness in their different, there's some good things in their differences, and there's some things that, are better about different organizations. It's just selecting the right one for you. And I think that was very good. But I think going back to a third thing is, I think it's the third thing, and I don't know you were saying resources. I think that the third is probably a catch-all of a combination of some of the books, but also going back to the coaches and mentors. Like, I continue to employ consultants to help our business, because I just never want to think that we don't need expertise that guides us. I really feel that I've had lots of great people alongside of us for the journey. And by the way, that continues. All of those things continue. So I want to be surrounded by really smart people inside the company and outside the company as coaches and consultants as well, because they always say that you're a product of the people you spend the most time with. So I want to spend the time with creative, bright people.
Absolutely. So here's a fun question that I love to throw at people. Knowing what you now know with your success and experience that you now have, if you could step into a time warp and hit a button and go back 20 years and speak to the young Joel of 20 years ago with the knowledge and wisdom of the Joel of today, what would you share with young Joel?
That's a great question, Ridgely. Let me give it a moment. I think I'd have an answer like this. Probably don't worry so much. Don't sweat the small stuff. Things have a way of balancing themselves out. Don't get too high at the highs and too low at the lows. I think that, your team feeds off your energy as a leader. And it's very important that you resonate a reasonably even-keeled approach. That doesn't mean that, you shouldn't be driven, maybe even a little intense, driving people and so forth. I'm not saying that. But you just don't get worried when times are a little slower or they're a little bit faster. And maybe you take those times that I at least now feel this way, that if something is slower, maybe it's an opportunity to figure out something new. And so, we have a thought in the firm that we really welcome innovative solutions, not just problems. And so I always now, think that let's not get down on something. Let's figure out how to make it work better. And I think the young version of me probably didn't have that mindset enough.
Mm-hmm. All right. So as we're kind of wrapping up, a couple things here. First of all, Aaron Rodgers, man, coming to your team. What are you thinking?
Listen,
I know you've been a long time Jets fan. I was thinking about the minute this was going down, I was thinking of you, brother.
Oh boy. I got to tell you something. Listen, my entire schedule this fall is centered around those Jet games. My sons and I brainwashed them into watching this cursed team. I'm hoping the curse ends. I've been watching them for 50 something years without ever seeing them in a Super Bowl. I'm a season ticket holder. I care a great deal. I tend to be a cockeyed optimist that, jinxes them by saying they're going to make the playoffs. This is their year, to the point where nobody listens to me anymore. But when they get a guy like this Hall of Famer, Aaron Rodgers, to come to what is a pretty good team other than quarterback so far, the expectations are high. They've been put on national TV, I think 6 times this year. I'm actually taking a little bit of a different approach, which is a little bit of caution, which is I don't want to get myself too excited. And frankly, this is going to sound weird, but I've heard this from long-suffering Cubs fans and Red Sox fans or whatever. If they do decide to not be the Jets and actually win the big one, I don't know how I'm going to handle that. I'm just not accustomed to winning like that. So I'm trying to prep myself for that. And But I had a lot of great memories with my dad going to those games, and I have great memories with my own family going, and it's a family bonding thing. It's all good. The one thing that you, as you get older with sports, it's like you don't get low with the lows either, but you really enjoy the wins, and that's okay, because if they lose, you still have to pay your mortgage and everything is going to be okay. And there's family health and other things that are way more important that you don't think about when you're 16 or 17, but now. But you know what? I'm excited. I think Aaron Rodgers is somebody that's a controversial figure that, is a lightning rod for some criticism, but he's got an awful lot of talent. I think he's coming in motivated, and I'm a big believer in people that are motivated. So if he stays healthy, I think we're going to do some damage.
I think it's going to be super fun to watch that. And as a very long time Kansas City Chiefs fan, we went through many, many, many years of nothing and horrible and terrible till recently being able to enjoy the other side of all that. Final question for you. Talk to me about your take, vision, perspective on the advent and evolution and current exponential growth of AI and how that's going to affect entrepreneurs.
Well, that's a really good question, and I think it is going to affect them. And I've got children that I'm also sensitive to because they're at those ages. And in fact, one of my kids just graduated college and majored in data. And I thought that was good because data is the foundation of AI. And everybody's talking about all the opportunities and all the evil that could come from it. And I guess, people that know better than me potentially think that way. I find myself looking at things like ChatGPT, this podcast ever watched in the future, that'll be maybe Model T of AI. But, I'm just fascinated by information. So when the web came out, I was somebody that read almanacs as a kid. I like it. It was a geeky side of me. I like statistics. I like information. So this is just furthering what the internet did. And I do think that there will be jobs lost. And I think that this, people are, you talk about ChatGPT, and when you do a search on something or you put some words in there to get certain things, and I fiddle with it a lot, it probably gets you to 50% of where you need to be sometimes. And I think the human element will always play a role in delivering an optimal result. But we should not think that the current state of AI is where it's going to be. It's going to be significantly better. And I think that, once again, I think we as professionals and entrepreneurs, I think of myself both ways. And, listen, we're setting up, just so we're setting up right now a new business, Signatrain, which is geared towards information education of entrepreneurs. There's a knowledge hub, there's live trainings and all those things. And, I know in the knowledge hub that artificial intelligence may supplement some of that down the road. And I'm cognizant of that. And I think that we just got to pay close attention where it's going. I really hope that, to me, it's a valuable tool and it doesn't upset society the way a lot of people are predicting, and that we as a human race can learn to live with it. If it needs to be modified in certain ways, so be it. But I think we need to always know and be like entrepreneurs need to be one step ahead of the curve. We're sports cars going around the curves. We're not tractor trailers. So we have to see what's coming. And if we see AI being something that's valuable for us, we need to adapt to it.
Yeah, I love that. We're sports cars, not tractor trailers. Final words from Joel Greenwald to the world. What would you like to leave us with? Some nugget or another, some thought as we wrap this up today?
Well, I think originally, I think this is great what you're doing, giving people some information about a lot of people that are going through their paths, a lot of different ways. I would just like to say that, everybody's path is unique. And there's bumps along the way. There always are bumps. There's continues to be bumps. They don't ever stop. But, in those bumps, that's where the excitement is. Getting around those bumps, that's where the challenges are. I'll tell you what, I don't ever want to be in a position where I have to stop thinking.
Yeah, exactly. We never want to be in a position where we have to stop thinking. Got to stay ahead of AI no matter what.
Absolutely.
Greenwald, thank you so very much for your time. On behalf of our community, we really appreciate the wisdom, the lessons, and I'm going to say it, go Jets.
Thank you.
All right, brother. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.